The Pacific ignition. The day the missiles rose. The night over the Pacific had been heavy, almost suffocating. Clouds moved low and slow, as if hiding secrets too dreadful for the dawn. Out there, past the calm line of the horizon, engines purred beneath steel decks, and radars hummed across the silence of the East Sea. American destroyers and South Korean warships patrolled as they had done countless times before. To the sailors on watch, it was routine. To the strategists in Pyongyang, it was the moment they had been waiting for. For 48 hours, encrypted bursts from a low-orbit North Korean satellite had been relaying coordinates, refining trajectories, and confirming targets. Inside hardened bunkers carved into mountains near Wonsan, countdowns ticked toward ignition. 5 Hwasong-12 intermediate-range ballistic missiles, 6 KN-23 short-range weapons, and batteries of sea-skimming anti-ship cruise missiles waited in their camouflaged cradles. Each warhead had been inspected twice. Each system had been hidden, moved, concealed, then hidden again. Pyongyang wanted surprise, and they had achieved it. At 07:42 a.m., aboard the USS John Finn, a guided missile destroyer assigned to a joint patrol, life carried on in rhythm. Coffee brewed in the galley. A petty officer joked with a fellow sailor about baseball scores. Radar screens pulsed in steady arcs, displaying nothing more than faint weather interference. The sea looked harmless. But in the war rooms of Pyongyang, a single encrypted command flickered across terminals. Fire. The first roar tore through the mountains like thunder trapped in stone. Launch canisters belched flames, and contrails clawed into the sky. To satellites orbiting overhead, the event was unmistakable. North Korea had initiated a mass strike. Inside the Combat Information Center of the John Finn, alarms shrieked as inbound tracks appeared. Multiple contacts. Bearing 270. Speed Mach 5, Mach 6, shouted the radar operator. The officer of the deck's voice cut through the chaos. This is not a drill. Battle stations. Set condition 1. Klaxons blared. Sailors sprinted through steel corridors, boots hammering on metal decks. Weapons crews manned stations. Damage control teams sealed bulkheads. And from the destroyer's vertical launch system, SM-6 interceptors roared upward, twisting toward the sky to meet the descending threats. The first missile duel had begun. Aegis under siege. The John Finn's Aegis system calculated in microseconds. Threat vectors were plotted. Probabilities updated in glowing green digits. 2 Hwasong-12s arced high, gliding through the upper atmosphere. Their re-entry paths carefully staggered to overwhelm defenses. Beneath them, KN-23s raced in erratic quasi-ballistic patterns, diving and weaving to outwit tracking radars. The destroyer answered with steel and fire. SM-6s streaked upward, each missile hunting in silence until its proximity fuse lit the heavens in blossoms of flame. 1 Hwasong disintegrated, fragments raining into the sea. Another was shredded at altitude. The explosion so bright sailors shielded their eyes even inside the combat center. But the KN-23s were different. Agile, brutal, designed to slip past the defenses. One broke through. The close-in weapon system, CIWS, shrieked to life, its Vulcan cannon vomiting a storm of tungsten rounds. The impact detonated the missile just 800 meters from the hull, sending shockwaves rattling through every rib of the ship. Sailors were thrown from their feet and lights flickered across compartments. But the John Finn still floated, still fought. Then came the second layer. Sea-skimming cruise missiles, Kumong-3s fired from hidden coastal launchers. Flying just meters above the water, they appeared late on radar. Too late for comfort. The destroyer's ESSM missiles leapt from their cells, intercepting some, but not all. One slammed into the port side of the ship. The explosion ripped through plating, water gushing into compartments. Alarms howled. Flooding in Section 4. Fire on Deck 2. Commander Ryan Caldwell gripped the bridge railing, his knuckles white. Seal the compartment. Get me status on propulsion. Helm. Maintain heading. We hold this line. His voice was steady, but every man and woman aboard knew the stakes. Survival itself. The wider net tightens. Miles away, the South Korean destroyer Sejong the Great locked onto a new contact. A Pukuksong-3 submarine-launched ballistic missile, fired from beneath the waves by a lurking Gorai-class submarine. Its trail rose steep and fast. South Korean SM-3 interceptors clawed upward, meeting the missile at 150 kilometers altitude. A silent, blinding flash marked the kill. Cheers erupted aboard, but the celebration lasted only seconds. Another contact was already inbound. Back at Yokosuka, Japan, The 7th Fleet Operations Center lit up in organized chaos. Reports cascaded. Multiple launches, electronic interference, possible second submarine detected. An admiral leaned over the map table. "This isn't a test. This is an opening strike. Get Ford's Air Wing airborne, now." The USS Gerald R. Ford, operating further south, surged into motion. F-35Cs screamed from its deck, followed by EA-18G Growlers primed to jam hostile radars. Overhead, B-1B Lancers roared from Guam, their bays packed with JASSM cruise missiles. The Alliance machine was awakening, but would it be in time? Fire on the water. Back on the East Sea, the battle was chaos incarnate. The John Finn, though wounded, unleashed her fury. LRASM anti-ship missiles thundered from her launchers, streaking toward the North Korean coast. Explosions rocked hidden batteries, fireballs rising from the cliffs where launchers had been concealed. F-35Bs from the USS America swooped in low, dropping JDAM precision bombs onto coastal positions. Entire hillside bunkers vanished in shockwaves. Growlers shredded North Korean radar, leaving their defenses blind. Yet North Korea pressed harder. 4 more Hwasong-12s erupted from inland launchers, followed by salvos of artillery rockets flooding the skies. Pyongyang's intent was unmistakable: overwhelm the defenses, cripple the patrol, and send a political message across the Pacific. On the John Finn, flooding was contained, fires beaten back. The crew fought not just machines but the fear that gnawed at their bones. Below deck, sailors whispered prayers. Above, gunners locked eyes with the horizon, waiting for the next inbound threat. One KN-23 tore past the defensive wall, striking the aft section of the South Korean destroyer Munmu the Great. The detonation ignited aviation fuel, sending black smoke twisting toward the sky. The Alliance staggered but did not fall. Caldwell's voice over the comms was iron. "All ships, hold formation, return fire. We do not break today." The moment of balance. By 08:00 a.m., the East Sea resembled a scarred battlefield. Columns of smoke marked burning wrecks along the North Korean coast. The sea churned with debris and flame. Allied ships bled but endured. From the sky, F-35s and B-1Bs turned the shoreline into rubble, suppressing batteries before they could reload. But under the waves, the silence carried its own danger. Sonar operators aboard the Sejong the Great reported a faint echo. Another submarine repositioning. The threat had not ended, it had only shifted. At Yokosuka, intelligence officers pieced together intercepted communications. North Korea had more launchers, more missiles hidden inland. This was not the entirety of their strike. It was merely the opening gambit. The admiral spoke grimly. "They're testing us. They want to know how far they can go before we push back." And the question hung heavy in the air. How far will the United States go in response? The open horizon. At 08:17 a.m., as the fires on the sea began to settle, the radio chatter eased into an eerie calm. The John Finn floated scarred but alive. Damage control teams patched her wounds. The South Korean ships steadied their formations. Overhead, fighters circled, their fuel running thin. The East Sea fell silent again, but it was the silence of an unfinished war. Somewhere beyond the horizon, more launchers stood ready. More submarines lurked in the depths. More plans simmered in the war rooms of Pyongyang. Commander Caldwell stood on the bridge, smoke curling in the distance. His eyes narrowed as he whispered to no one in particular, "This is only the beginning." The outcome of the next strike remained unknown. Would the alliance escalate with crushing retaliation? Or would Pyongyang gamble again, daring the Pacific to ignite into full-scale war? For now, the sea waited. And so did the world. The silent hunt. At 08:26 a.m., sonar aboard the Sejong the Great pulsed with urgency. A contact had re-emerged, low, faint, deliberate. It wasn't just one submarine, now there were two, weaving slowly beneath the waves like predators circling a wounded herd. Their propellers whispered through the abyss, almost inaudible, masked by thermal layers. But the South Korean sonar crew caught it. The ghost of movement heading west, closer to Allied ships. 2 subs confirmed, the operator called. Bearing 315 and 080. Depth, 200 meters. Commander Caldwell clenched his jaw. Aerial threats could be met with speed and firepower, but beneath the surface was a different battlefield, one of patience, stealth, and sudden death. He keyed his comms. "Deploy ASW teams. Get the Seahawks airborne. Keep them hunting." From the John Finn's deck, MH-60R helicopters lifted into the air, their rotors thundering as they skimmed low over the sea. Sonobuoys splashed down in rapid succession, forming a net of listening ears. Each buoy pinged the dark, mapping hidden lines where steel leviathans lurked. Minutes stretched like hours. Then, confirmation. A Pukuksong missile tube opened below. "Launch signature!" shouted a voice over comms. The sea erupted. A second submarine-launched ballistic missile tore upward, its exhaust boiling the water into a white cauldron. But the Seahawks were ready. A torpedo dropped, plunging into the depths with a mechanical shriek. 30 seconds later, the ocean bloomed with a violent shockwave. Metal fragments and oil surged upward. One submarine was gone. The other, however, slipped deeper, vanishing into the black. The retaliation. While the sea boiled with hidden duels, the skies rumbled with escalation. From Guam, the B-1B strike group had reached range. Bay doors yawned open, and a storm of JASSM cruise missiles streaked low, hugging the curvature of the Earth. Their targets, North Korean command bunkers, radar arrays, and hardened storage depots far inland. The first detonations rolled across the peninsula like distant thunder. Entire ridges collapsed where tunnels had been carved. Shockwaves shattered windows in villages miles away. Pyongyang's command network flickered, briefly disrupted, but not destroyed. Still, the retaliation came swift. Artillery positions along the DMZ unleashed a curtain of rockets, not aimed at ships this time, but at South Korean border towns. Seoul's air defenses whirred into action, PAC-3 interceptors streaking skyward. Civilian sirens wailed. Millions scrambled for shelters, unsure if this was the beginning of all-out war. Edge of collapse. Aboard the John Finn, the crew pushed beyond exhaustion. Bulkheads dripped with condensation from the fires below deck. Engineers worked knee-deep in seawater to stabilize power relays. One misstep and the destroyer would be left adrift, a sitting target for the next salvo. Commander Caldwell paced the bridge, every decision a razor between survival and annihilation. He knew Washington would be awake now. The president briefed, options drafted. Precision strikes, limited escalation, or the unthinkable total war. But here, on the East Sea, choices were immediate. Another contact blinked on radar. Low, fast, irregular, yet unmistakable. A swarm of small drones, kamikaze style, launched from disguised fishing trawlers hugging the coast. The new battlefield had arrived. Cheap, expendable, relentless. CIWS batteries whirred. Guns stitched the sky, shredding dozens. Yet gaps remained. One drone slammed into the John Finn's deck, tearing open steel plating near the aft gun mount. The shock jolted sailors off their feet once more. "We can't take many more of those," muttered the XO. Caldwell's reply was firm. "Then we end the swarm before it ends us. Load counter battery, target the source." And with a shudder, the John Finn's Tomahawk cells unlocked. One after another, missiles erupted into the sky, curving inland to obliterate the disguised trawlers and their hidden command posts. The sea lit up in firestorms. The breaking point. By 8:08:53 a.m., the East Sea was no longer just a battlefield. It was a graveyard of burning hulks, shattered drones, and sinking submarines. Smoke columns marked both victory and loss. Every surviving crew knew this was no longer a skirmish. It was a test of endurance, resolve, and the limits of restraint. In Pyongyang, the War Council debated furiously. Their opening strike had bloodied the alliance but had not broken it. In Washington, the Joint Chiefs urged caution but prepared for escalation. And in the waters between, men and women stood on steel decks, waiting for the next shadow on radar, the next roar from the sky, the next whisper from beneath the waves. The Pacific was lit, and its fire was spreading.